The night everything changed. If motherhood gives you anything truly valuable, it gives you radar. Not the convenient kind that helps you locate missing socks or find toys buried under couch cushions. The animal kind. The primal, instinctive, something in this room is deeply wrong kind. That radar hit me the moment my husband, Robert, and I stepped through his parents' front door that evening. His mother, Ruth, greeted me with a smile so tight it barely qualified as one, the kind of smile that is really just teeth arranged in a warning. His father, Gerald, did not bother with a smile at all. He looked at me the way people look at a bill they were not expecting, inconvenient, unwelcome, and already resented. And then there was Jenna, Robert's younger sister, seated at the table with the unmistakable expression of someone who had swallowed a secret and was absolutely bursting to spit it out. Our daughter, Mia, 7 years old and sweet enough to make your chest ache, slipped into the chair beside me without a care in the world. She swung her little legs back and forth, humming something soft and tuneless under her breath, completely unaware that the adults around her were sitting on a powder keg. The room felt staged, rehearsed. Everyone was too calm, too quiet, too ready. We made it through the salad course. Barely. Then Ruth cleared her throat, that specific, deliberate kind of throat clearing that signals a bomb is about to be dropped, gift-wrapped in the language of family concern. Jenna, she said, with carefully performed casualness, didn't you want to share something with everyone tonight? My stomach dropped before Jenna even opened her mouth. She did not just speak, she performed. She pushed her chair back slowly, rose to her feet with dramatic weight, and pointed directly at me across the dinner table like a prosecutor who had been rehearsing this moment for weeks. You, she announced, her voice trembling with barely contained excitement, are a cheater. I blinked. For one absurd second, I genuinely thought she might mean board games or that ridiculous family diet challenge I kept declining to join. My brain refused to process any other meaning. But then she turned away from me. She turned toward Mia, my 7-year-old daughter, and she said, "You are not really ours. Robert is not your dad." The world dropped out from beneath me. Mia went completely still. The color drained from her small face in a single terrible moment. Her legs stopped swinging. Her humming stopped. She turned to look at Robert, then at me, then back at Robert again, her eyes wide and searching and absolutely terrified. "Daddy," she whispered. Her voice was so small it barely existed. What does she mean? My heart did not just break. It cracked, loudly, violently, in a way I swear I could physically feel reverberating through my ribcage. And then, because apparently cruelty travels in packs, Gerald delivered his line in a voice as flat and cold as winter concrete. "Sweetie," he said, looking directly at my daughter, "we are not really your grandparents." I watched Mia flinch. An actual physical flinch, as though the words had made contact with her body. I did not wait another second. I did not shout. I did not argue. I did not give them the satisfaction of a scene. I reached for my daughter, lifted her from her chair, pulled her tight against my chest, took her hand, and walked toward the hallway. As I turned, my eyes caught a glimpse of something on the table, a thick envelope, official-looking, the unmistakable kind that comes from medical clinics or testing laboratories. I did not touch it. I did not stop. But I noticed the way Robert's expression shifted the instant his eyes landed on it, a tightening around the jaw. A stillness that said he already knew exactly what was in that envelope and exactly what it meant. I kept walking, but I could still hear everything behind me. "Ruth, we did you a favor. It is a paternity test. Go on, open it. She played you for a fool, Robbie. See for yourself." Mia trembled against me in the hallway. I pressed my lips to her hair and held her closer. And then came Robert's voice. Calm, controlled, quiet in the way that a deep river is quiet, enormous power moving just beneath a still surface. "This," he said, "is the last time we will ever visit you." Silence, the sharp, shocked kind. The kind that happens when people realize the script they prepared has just been torn up. Ruth sputtered. What do you mean? You should be angry at her, not at us." Jenna's voice pitched upward into something close to a screech. "We told you the truth. We were helping you." Robert did not raise his voice. Not once. But every single word that followed landed like a piece of steel. "I cannot believe you ordered a DNA test behind my back. I cannot believe you said any of this in front of a child." A pause. "You are right about one thing." I held my breath. "You are not her grandparents anymore. And I am not your son." The room erupted. Chairs scraped. Someone swore. Someone else tried desperately to talk over him. And then Robert said the sentence that turned the entire night inside out. "Yes," he said, "I know she is not biologically mine. Dead silence I have always known, more silence. The stunned, choking kind that is almost impossible to recover from, and my wife never cheated on me. A few moments later, I heard his footsteps, slow and deliberate, moving toward the hallway. He appeared in the doorway. His eyes found Mia first. Then they found mine. "Let us go," he said quietly. We left. No dramatic exit. No final speeches. Just a clean, permanent cut, as swift and final as a door closing on a chapter that should have ended years ago. To understand how we arrived at that dinner table, you have to go back much further than that night. If you had told me years ago that my in-laws would one day accuse me of infidelity using a secret DNA test, I would not have laughed. I would have sighed slowly and said, yeah, that tracks. Because nothing with Robert's family ever happened suddenly. The problems did not explode. They whispered, slowly, persistently, consistently, until one day you look around and realize you have spent years pretending things were normal when they were anything but. When I first met Robert, he was 21. Quiet in a genuinely sweet way. He had that earnest, slightly overwhelmed quality of someone who worked very hard at everything and expected others to do the same. I fell for him embarrassingly quickly. Meeting his family, however, felt like sitting down at a table where everyone had already chosen sides before you arrived, and yours was not among them. Ruth deployed small talk like an interrogation technique. Gerald prefaced every single opinion with "well, actually," as though the world were always in the process of being corrected by him. And Jenna, around 10 years old at the time, was already fluent in a language I can only describe as polished superiority. At the very first family dinner, Ruth leaned across the table toward me and asked, with a smile so sweet it left an aftertaste, "So what exactly are your intentions with our Robert?" Our Robert. As though he were a family heirloom I had been caught trying to slip under my coat. She did not stop there. Throughout the evening, she wove in observations the way a skilled seamstress works invisible stitches, so subtle you barely feel them going in. "Robert is such a generous boy. I am sure he paid for your meal. Girls your age can be quite expensive. For the record, I had bought all the groceries for that dinner. But when someone is already casting you as the villain in their story, facts are merely inconveniences." Young Jenna was paying close attention, taking meticulous mental notes like an intern training for a career in hostility. "Why do you let him buy you things?" she demanded once, with the gravity of a congressional hearing. "He bought me a $2 plastic keychain," I said. "That adds up," she replied, dead serious. Meanwhile, the person actually funding everything in this family, quietly, consistently, without recognition, was Robert. He had put himself through community college entirely without parental help. The moment his first paycheck cleared, his parents began treating his income as a line item in their household budget. He called it helping the family. I called it mandatory tithing to the church of emotional guilt. But I loved him, so I smiled through the dinners and said nothing. We got married. We were genuinely happy. We built our own routines, our own world, our own home that felt like a refuge from the quiet dysfunction of his family. The obligatory bi-weekly dinners became something I learned to tolerate the way one tolerates dental cleanings, necessary, mildly painful, and survivable as long as they stayed brief. Then we started trying for a baby. Trying became tracking. Tracking became timing. Timing stretched into 2 years of nothing. No lines on tests, no good news, just a calendar full of hope slowly curdling into disappointment. And then came the doctor's office, the too quiet consultation room, the pause before results are delivered, the gentle, careful voice that wraps a devastating truth in the softest language it can find. Robert would never have biological children. Not unlikely. Not challenging, but possible. 0. Medically, biologically, permanently 0. My husband held my hand, squeezed it once, and whispered, "Okay." And he meant it. That single word held no bitterness, no recrimination, no collapse. Just an extraordinary man recalibrating in real time with grace I had never witnessed before in another human being. But that okay lived in the back of my chest for months. We talked about it for hours, then days, then weeks. We sat with it, examined it from every angle, cried about it in the way you cry about things that are nobody's fault. Eventually, it came down to 3 choices. Remain child-free, pursue adoption, or use a sperm donor. We chose the donor. Not because the decision was easy, nothing about it was, but because it gave us the possibility of building the family we wanted without navigating years of an adoption system held together with paperwork and prayers and waiting lists that stretched toward the horizon. We made that decision quietly, privately, and then we made another decision, equally deliberate, equally considered. We would not tell Robert's family, not because we were ashamed. We had nothing to be ashamed of, but because we knew, with the bone-deep certainty that comes from years of careful observation, exactly what Ruth and Gerald and Jenna would do with that information. They would weaponize it. They would whisper about it at family gatherings. They would use it to construct a hierarchy of real versus not real, ours versus not quite ours. And the idea of any one of them looking at our child and seeing something diminished, something lesser, was simply unbearable. So we kept our secret and we moved forward. Then Mia was born. She was and remains the most perfect thing I have ever encountered. She looked like me, strongly, unmistakably like me, which made complete biological sense. But even this became material for Ruth's commentary. She does not have any of Robert's features, Ruth would say, squinting at our infant daughter the way someone examines a suspicious item at a yard sale. "Ha, funny that," Gerald said once, with a smile that contained a question he was too cowardly to ask directly. "She is definitely yours, right, Robbie?" Robert's self-control during these years was genuinely remarkable. He never reacted, never cracked, not once. Jenna, however, was the most persistent irritant of all because she was old enough to know better and young enough to believe she would never face consequences. Every dollar spent on Mia was, in Jenna's accounting, a dollar stolen from her own future. Every vacation we took as a family was extravagance. Every gift, every experience, every small joy we gave our daughter was held up as evidence of our selfishness. "You spoil her," Jenna would say. We had bought Mia a $3 bubble wand. And when Jenna graduated high school and announced she would be attending an expensive private university, not community college, not a state school, but a gleaming institution with tuition fees that resembled a medical procedure, she presented this information to Robert not as a request but as a settled matter. He paid. 2 full years of tuition. A generous, back-breaking, thoroughly unacknowledged gift. And Jenna's gratitude manifested as this: "You take too many vacations. You spend too much on your wife. If you did not spoil your own family so much, maybe you could properly support your real family." Real family. There it was. The word they had been circling for years. The distinction they had been quietly building, brick by brick, until the night they decided to finally use it as a weapon and chose my 7-year-old daughter as the target. If silence had a temperature, the drive home that night would have flash-frozen a lake solid. Mia sat in the backseat, small and rigid, staring out the window with the stillness of a child who has been required to understand something far too large for them. Robert gripped the steering wheel with both hands, knuckles pale. I watched Mia in the mirror, waiting for a question, a tear, any kind of release. Nothing came. Just a little girl holding her whole world together through sheer heartbreaking determination. When we arrived home, she walked inside like she was sleepwalking. She did not run to her room, did not kick off her shoes, did not ask for a bedtime snack. She simply stood in the hallway and waited for someone to tell her what reality looked like now. Robert and I exchanged the kind of look that communicates an entire conversation in a single glance. Okay, we stopped being shocked. We start being parents. We sat with her on the couch. I took one of her hands. Robert took the other. "Mia." I began, keeping my voice soft and steady. "Do you remember how we have always told you that we wanted you, that we tried for a very, very long time to have you?" She nodded. "Well," Robert said gently, "when Mommy and I were trying to have a baby, the doctors told us that my body could not make bobbies the regular way. So the doctors helped us. You grew in Mommy's tummy. You were wanted before you even existed. You were loved before we ever met you. And you are my daughter, now and always and completely." And Mommy never cheated, I added, because that particular poison needed to be neutralized immediately before it had any chance to take root. Daddy has always known exactly how you were made. He never had a single second of doubt about you. Mia listened to all of this without a word. She did not cry. She did not ask anything. She just nodded once, quietly slipped off the couch and walked to her room. The door clicked softly behind her. Robert pressed his hands to his face. "I do not know if that was acceptance or emotional shutdown," he said. "Both," I said. "Welcome to childhood trauma at high speed." We gave her space, but while she processed, Robert walked calmly into the office, sat down at his desk, and opened the banking application on his computer. His face was set in an expression I had never seen on him before, not anger, not grief, but something quiet and absolute and entirely finished. First click, cancel the recurring monthly transfer to Ruth and Gerald. Second click, cancel Jenna's tuition payment. Third click, close the supplementary debit card Jenna had been using as though it were her own. Tara, he called from the office, I am cutting off everything. All of it. I walked to the doorway. Good. He laughed, a short, slightly unsteady laugh. Feels weirdly healthy. I would bake you a congratulatory cake, I said, but after tonight I am not sure either of us can emotionally handle cake. He leaned back in his chair, exhaling slowly and deeply, like someone releasing a breath they had been holding since childhood. This feels like the first decision I have ever made about them that actually makes sense. The next morning arrived quiet and fragile. Mia emerged from her room holding her favorite stuffed animal and asked if she could watch cartoons. No breakdown, no follow-up questions, just gentleness and a fragility we handled as carefully as glass. By noon, Robert's phone began ringing. Ruth and Gerald. He stared at the screen as though it were something mildly radioactive. Then he answered. The screaming began before he had finished saying hello. How could you do this? Your sister needs that money. You are destroying her future. We cannot manage this without you. The deadline is in 2 days. Robert held the phone precisely 1 inch from his ear, his expression entirely blank. I am not paying any more, he said. Robert, be reasonable, Gerald barked. She cannot continue her education without your support. She is 20 years old, Robert replied. She can take out a loan. She can get a job. She can be an adult. Ruth's voice pitched into something close to a shriek. You cannot simply abandon your family. You abandoned mine last night, he said. Silence. Sharp, ugly, burning. Then the guilt spiral began. You are choosing her over us. You are brainwashed. You owe us. Your sister is depending on you. And Robert hung up. No speech. No final words, just a click. I walked over and kissed his cheek. I am proud of you. He looked genuinely startled. I have never done that before, he admitted, hung up on them. How does it feel? He exhaled, long and slow, like something very heavy sliding off his shoulders. Good. Actually good. They showed up at the house 20 minutes later. Not frantic, not apologetic, just the kind of knock that says we are coming in regardless of your answer. I opened the door to find Ruth and Gerald standing on the porch, faces tight, breathing elevated, wearing the particular expression of older people who have decided that being disrespected is a far greater crime than anything they themselves have done. Let us in, Ruth said. Not a request. I stepped aside before the neighbors could witness what was about to happen. They walked through my front door with the ease of people who believe they own whatever room they enter. Robert appeared in the hallway. What are you doing here? Gerald answered with, you hung up on us. Yes, Robert confirmed. Ruth's eyebrows climbed toward her hairline. That is how you speak to your parents now. That is how I speak to anyone who crosses a line, he replied. She folded her arms. We want an explanation immediately. I canceled the tuition payments. I canceled the transfers. I am not paying anymore. The argument that followed was loud and circular and ultimately futile. Every accusation, every guilt trip, every invocation of family loyalty met with the same quiet, immovable calm. Robert did not shout. He did not retreat. He simply stated facts and waited. And then from somewhere down the hallway, a small voice. Daddy. Mia stood at the edge of the hallway in her bare feet, her hair still damp from her bath. Her eyes moved between all of us, reading the room with the instinctive accuracy of a child who has learned that adult silence usually means something is wrong. Then she heard it. Ruth's voice, still insisting, saying the words that cracked everything open again. We had a right to know that she is not our granddaughter biologically. Mia's face changed. They said I am not their granddaughter. Her voice broke on the last word. And before her knees could give out, I was already there, across the room, lifting her, holding her against me while she clung to my shirt and cried. Not loudly, not dramatically, just the quiet shuddering sobs of a child whose sense of safety has been shaken twice in 12 hours. Robert walked to us, placed a steady hand on Mia's back, and then turned to face his parents. You need to leave. Ruth stepped forward. Robert, just listen for 1 moment. I am done listening, he said. Gerald tried. We came here to fix this. No, Robert said. You came here to justify yourselves. This is not how a son speaks to his parents, Ruth said, her voice trembling with wounded dignity. Robert looked at her steadily. This is how a father protects his child. The sentence settled into the room like a closing door. If you walk out that door, Gerald began, attempting one final act of leverage. I know, Robert said. He crossed to the front door and held it open with calm, steady hands. Please go. Ruth stared at him for a long, disbelieving moment. Then she stepped past him. Gerald followed. They walked to their car without another word. Robert closed the door, locked it, checked it twice. When he turned around, the anger was gone, replaced by something quieter and infinitely heavier. He gently lifted Mia from my arms and held her against his chest. She buried her face in his shoulder, her small fist curled tightly in his shirt. It is okay, he whispered. You are okay, she cried until her breathing slowed, until the tension dissolved out of her little body, until the only sound in the house was her soft, intermittent sniffling. Robert did not let go. He did not speak again. He did not need to. Some choices explain themselves. A week passed, quiet, steadier than anything we had felt in years. Mia returned slowly to herself, coloring at the dining table, crawling into laps with drawings to show us, asking very serious questions about cartoon plot points. One evening while we made dinner, she looked up with great deliberateness and asked, "Do we still have to go to Grandma Ruth's Sunday lunches?" Robert froze, spatula in hand. Because she added, "I do not want to pretend to like her meatloaf anymore." It tastes like old socks. Robert laughed. A real laugh, small and tired, but completely genuine. No, he told her. No more Sunday lunches. Good, she said, already moving on. Can we have tacos instead? Just like that, a weight lifted. Then on Saturday morning, as we were getting Mia's shoes on for a library trip, there was a knock at the door. Soft, hesitant, almost apologetic in its rhythm. Robert and I looked at each other. We both knew. Jenna stood on the porch alone, holding a small bakery box tied with twine. Her eyes were red. Her shoulders were rounded. She looked, for the first time in her life, genuinely unsure of her place in the world. "Tara," she said, her voice thin and careful, "can I talk to you both?" Robert stepped beside me, his jaw tightened automatically, not hostility exactly, just the instinctive defense of someone who has been burned before. "I came to apologize," Jenna said. She extended the bakery box with trembling hands. I did not know the full truth. If I had, I would never have said those things. Not anywhere. Certainly not in front of Mia. What I did was horrible, and I am so sorry. Her voice cracked on the last two words. Beneath all the years of entitlement and performance, I glimpsed something that looked like a frightened young woman who had finally run out of script. Robert nodded once. Nothing warm, nothing soft, just acknowledgement. "We accept your apology," he said. Jenna looked relieved, then panicked, then relieved again. She glanced past us. "Is Mia here? I want to say it to her too." "No," I said, "and she does not need any more confusion right now." "Right, of course, that makes complete sense," Jenna said quickly. A silence stretched between us, the kind that people usually rush to fill with small talk. Jenna did not reach for small talk. After a long, struggling pause, she reached for the real reason she had come. "I also wanted to ask," she began, her eyes moving everywhere except toward our faces, "if you could still pay my tuition." There it was. "I cannot afford it," she continued quickly, words tumbling over each other. "Not even close. If I do not pay, they will drop me from the semester. I do not know what else to do. Could you maybe just loan it to me? I swear I will pay it back when I graduate, when I get a job, I promise." "No," Robert said. The word landed like a stone dropped into still water. "No," he said again, in case there was any ambiguity. She swallowed hard. "I understand that after everything it is complicated, but just this one semester, just to get me through the transition." "No," her face twisted. Tears formed at the corners of her eyes. "Please," she whispered, "I cannot drop out. You do not understand. There is no one else." "I understand completely," Robert said. "You are an adult. Adults figure things out. I did not mean to hurt anyone," she said quietly. "I did not know. That," Robert said, "is exactly the problem. You did not know. You did not ask. You did not pause for even one moment to consider what those words might do to a 7-year-old child. You chose to perform your accusation in front of her, and she is the one who is still carrying the damage from it." "I said I was sorry," she whispered. "And we accepted your apology," I said. "But an apology is not a coupon." She winced. "I cannot believe you would let me fail," she said softly. After everything, Robert repeated, and in his voice was the weight of years of tuition payments, years of quiet support, years of showing up for a family that had never quite shown up for his. "Yes, after everything." Another tear slipped down her cheek. "Is there anything I can do to change your mind?" "No," he said simply. Her shoulders collapsed. She turned toward the door, then paused with one hand on the frame and said almost inaudibly, "I never thought you would choose her over us." Robert looked at her steadily. "She is my daughter," he said. "There was never a choice." Jenna nodded once, sharp and defeated, and walked into the cold morning air. Robert closed the door, leaned against it, let out a breath that seemed to carry years of weight inside it. I pressed my forehead to his. "We did the right thing." "I know," he said, eyes closed. "I just did not expect it to feel like this." "Like what?" "Like I finally grew up. 6 months later, life is simpler than it has been in years. No shouting matches. No guilt trips. No phone calls with invisible invoices attached. No Sunday lunches with meatloaf that tastes like old socks. Just our family, the 3 of us, and the particular extraordinary peace that comes from finally being free. Robert's paycheck belongs to our family now. Every dollar. And Mia, she is the happiest I have ever seen her. Light-footed, confident, completely unbothered by people who once made her feel small. She draws pictures of our family at the dining table, just the 3 of us standing under a big crooked sun, and she never asks why certain people are not in them anymore. Meanwhile, word travels. Ruth and Gerald had to take out emergency loans when Jenna missed the window to apply for student financial aid. Then another loan when the first was not enough. They eventually refinanced their house to cover her tuition. They are buried now, in debt, in consequence, in the compounding interest of years of entitlement finally presented as a bill. Jenna works extra hours just to keep pace. The same people who treated us like we owed them the world are the ones drowning in it. And us, we are finally free. So did Robert go too far, or not nearly far enough?